Hi, I'm Dana. Welcome to Made Every Day. Today we're going to sew something for you. We're going to make a really cute, stretchy knit pencil skirt, and it's only going to take us about 20 minutes to sew. So let's get started. The thing I love about this project is that not only is it a quick sew, but it only takes about a yard of fabric. And the other good news is that more and more manufacturers are creating knit fabrics. You can find them in a fabric store and online. I've created this cool black and white version here. And today, we're gonna sew a fun stripy skirt because stripes are my favorite. Here's what you need. 1 yard of knit fabric and about 1 yard of 1-inch wide elastic. For this skirt, we need 2 rectangles of fabric, and the dimensions are gonna be perfectly fit for your body. So let's take a couple measurements. First, measure around your hips, all the way around. Mine is 38 inches. And then subtract about 3 inches from that. This will just help your skirt be nice and snug and form-fitted around your body. So for me, 38 minus 3 is 35. And then because we're cutting a front and a back to our skirt, divide that number in half, 17.5. So the width of my rectangles is 17.5 inches. To find the length of your skirt, measure from your waist down to your knees. Mine is 20 inches. And then add about 7 inches to that. That will give you plenty of room to add a waistband, to add a hem. And I think it's kind of cute if your skirt hits right at the knee or just a little bit below. Okay, so I'm gonna cut my skirt 27 by 17.5 inches. Let's cut. I have 2 pieces of fabric here, and I'm not going to cut this on the fold because I'm gonna have 2 side seams. So take your ruler, and if you remember my measurements, 17.5, the width is going to be the part of the fabric that is going across your body, the part that stretches. So let's measure 17.5 inches. And these rulers are really great because they go up to 18 inches. And I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it as I'm going. 17.5 cut to there, move down. And continue cutting. And don't worry if you're not cutting a completely straight line. We're working with knit fabric here, which stretches and is very forgiving. And now let's cut the length. I want this to be 27 inches. And lucky for me, I'm working with stripes, so I've got a line all ready for me to cut. Okay, now you could sew your skirt just as the fabric is now, but let's add one more element. Let's taper in the top and the bottom so that it hugs really nicely around your waist and your knees. I've cut up my fabric with right sides of the fabric touching so that I can place markings on the wrong side of the fabric. And what we're gonna do is measure in 1 inch from the edge of the fabric. Do that on the other side also. And then we're gonna measure down 6 inches. And these are just kind of general measurements that work pretty nicely for most body sizes. If you find that your waist is smaller than that, you can go in even further. If you feel like you need it to taper down slightly less, you can go down further on the sides. And then what we wanna do is connect these two and create a diagonal line. So just draw your line, just like that. Do the same thing on the other side. And then we're gonna cut those out. Use your scissors, use your rotary cutter, whichever one you want. Cut this diagonal line, cut it on the other side. And this is kind of similar to sewing darts in a woven fabric, meaning it gives you similar effect. Now fold this in half and let's cut the other side so that it matches. The top and the bottom of this skirt are identical, which is pretty cool. It makes it easy to sew. And now we are ready to sew. Let's go on to the next step. Now what we want to do is to sew down both sides. And it's really important when you're sewing with knit fabrics that you use a stitch that can stretch with your fabric. If you use a straight stitch, it would just break the first time you put the skirt on. So check out what settings come on your machine. Every machine has a zigzag stitch, which works great for this, and I'll show you that in a moment. My Baby Lock comes with a variety of different stitches. I can see them right up here on my machine, and I can also read about them in my owner's manual. And one day I played with some of these stitches and tried a bunch of different ones out, and I found one that I really liked called an overcast stitch. So let me show you both options. For the sides, I'm gonna use a zigzag stitch. So just put your fabric right under your machine, select a zigzag, and I'm gonna move mine up to about a 2.5 stitch length. And then just sew right down. Do a little back stitch at the beginning. Now when you sew with knits, you don't want to pull them or really push them. You kind of let the machine feed the fabric through for you. Okay, I've used a white thread here so you can kind of see that zigzag stitch. It's just what you think, zigzag. Okay, let's sew the other side. Now as I'm sewing, if you have any uneven pieces on your sides, just try to sew a nice clean line with your sewing machine. Okay, we sewed both our sides. Now let's sew the waistband. For the waistband and for the hem, you really want to use a thread color that coordinates with your fabric, since you will actually see this on the outside of the skirt. So I have already changed my bobbin thread, and now I'm doing the top thread. And it's real easy to do. You just follow all the markings on your machine. And the thing that I love about this baby lock is that it has a fantastic needle threader. All I do when I get around here is I cut my thread, then I press this little lever, and it goes right through the needle. No more sitting here, poking around, trying to get in place. Now we're ready to sew. Grab your elastic. I have about 1 yard here of 1 inch wide elastic. And I say about a yard because you don't need an exact measurement. What we're gonna do is rather than create a casing for the elastic, we're just gonna sew it directly to the fabric itself, slightly pulling it as we go. And when we're done, we'll cut off the excess. It makes it really easy to sew waistband. Now you wanna use a stitch again that's gonna stretch with your elastic and with your fabric. So you could use a zigzag again, but what I'm gonna use is a cool stitch called an overcast stitch. And I found that on my machine as I was checking out all the different options. And it's great because it kind of mimics what a serger does and it makes it really stretchy for me. And what I'm gonna do is open it. I have my skirt turned right side out. We're sewing the elastic onto the inside of the skirt. And just place it about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Start in the middle back. Now as I'm sewing, I'm just pulling ever so slightly. You don't want to tug very much because you don't want this to be a really gathered skirt. You just want the waistband to be nice and snug and fit well around your body. Make sure you're not pulling on the knit fabric as you go, just the elastic. Now look, you can see as I'm sewing, let me pause and show you what this looks like. You can see that overcast stitch. It's kind of cool looking, and look how stretchy that is. That is definitely not gonna break as I put the skirt on. Okay, keep going. Okay, we made it back to the beginning. And what you wanna do is to just overlap those two ends and just sew right over them. Do a little back stitch. And then we're gonna cut off this excess right here. And the last thing I wanna do is to sew these two little loose ends together so they don't poke out of my skirt. So just stick it under your machine and sew with the same stitch. Just go back and forth a couple times. Okay, now let's have a look at our waistband. If I fold it under how it was when I sewed it, it looks like this. Fold it under one more time. And just like that, you pretty much have a finished waistband. What you'd wanna do if you left it like this is to sew a little side seam right here at both sides just to hold the elastic in place. But what I'd like to do is finish it off even more. So I'm gonna go back around the waistband again with that same stitch, and it'll look really nice and polished. So stick your fabric under your machine, and I'm starting near the back again. And just start sewing. The thing that's nice about having this polished and finished off is that if I tuck my shirt in, it'll look really nice. When you get to the seams, just sew a little bit slower so you can make through all those layers. And you can already see how this looks. Really polished and really professional and really stretchy too. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, I made it back to the beginning. I'm gonna do a little back stitch. Now we are ready to sew our hemline. Hemming your skirt is real simple. Start by ironing the edge under 1/2 inch. And since I'm working with the striped fabric, it's really easy to do this. If you have a fabric that doesn't have stripes, you can just eyeball it, which you know I love to do. Or you can actually use a seam gauge or a ruler to just help you measure precise amounts. Now what we want to do is fold it another inch and iron that in place. Okay, we've pressed our hem in place, now let's sew it. Now I'm using the same stitch here that I used at the waistband, that overcast stitch. You could also use a zigzag. Just something that's gonna stretch. Because as you walk and move in your cute, tight, fitted pencil skirt, you definitely want the fabric to be able to give a little bit. Okay, just go all the way around. And don't tug the fabric at all as you go, because you don't want your hemline to look stretched or wavy, which knit fabric has a tendency to do if you pull it as you're sewing. I've made it back to the beginning here. Let's cut this off, and we are done. And look at that, in about 20 minutes, we made a really cool skirt. I think all your friends are gonna want one now too. For more ideas and tutorials, check out my website, madeeveryday.com. And for more information on sewing machines, go to babylock.com, where it's all for the love of sewing. I'll see you next time.